Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Greg Ramsey. From the pages of Marvel Comics to the silver screen, it's Earth's mightiest heroes, fighting to reverse the damage done by the most powerful being they've ever faced in a war that continues to be one of the most epic stories ever told, and one that features what could be the Marvel Cinematic Universe's final chapter starring the original cast. We're talking about Avengers Endgame. Released in the United States on April 26, 2019, and directed by the Russo brothers on a script by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, Avengers Endgame was the follow-up to 2018's wildly successful Infinity War, which brought the bulk of the Marvel Cinematic Universe together in one film for the first time ever. Endgame reunited nearly all the MCU's characters on screen once again, and with an historic 21-film saga as its foundation, the movie sought to complete the story that Marvel began with the first Iron Man in 2008. The MCU's heavy hitters all returned for the film, including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo, Brie Larson, and Jeremy Renner in what could very well be their final time together in a Marvel film. Avengers Endgame takes place less than a month from the final moments of Infinity War, which saw Thanos achieve his goal of using the Infinity Gauntlet to wipe out half of all life in the universe. Iron Man, who had been trapped on a ship during the weeks after the snap, was rescued by Captain Marvel, but was in no shape to help his teammates upon his return. The Avengers roster, though defeated and depleted thanks to Thanos, once again came together to track down the Mad Titan in an effort to undo the staggering loss of life. Captain America, the Hulk, Black Widow, the Falcon, Captain Marvel, Hawkeye, and Thor caught up to Thanos, but once again they were unsuccessful. 5 years later, however, they were given a second chance to make things right thanks to Ant-Man, who had been trapped in the quantum realm. Ant-Man's experience in the realm led the remaining Avengers to formulate a plan for time travel, in which the mission was to retrieve all 6 Infinity Stones throughout the timeline. With Iron Man back in the fold and all the heroes once again working as a team, the Avengers set out on the ultimate mission of renewal and redemption. Avengers Endgame was met with rave reviews from critics and fans alike who praised the film for its direction, acting, emotional weight, and action sequences. The movie grossed nearly $2.8 billion worldwide and surpassed Infinity War's entire theatrical run in just 11 days. The film received numerous awards and nominations and is the highest-grossing film of all time. Avengers Endgame is regarded by many as the best film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe thus far. The scope of the movie, as well as the grand scale of the story itself, has arguably never been matched in any film, and it is the crowning achievement of the MCU's run. And that's the lowdown on Avengers Endgame. It was only a matter of time before we did Endgame. We did Infinity War, and we had to split that sucker up into 2 parts because it basically ended up being a movie commentary for us, which I don't know if we actually planned it that way, but the movie was just so big, it didn't make sense to try to cram a 3-hour film into 1 hour. It's just too hard, and honestly, we would have left a lot of things out that we just didn't want to leave out. And it looks like we might be heading that way with Endgame as well. The film is too big, it's too important, and there's too much going on to do it any type of justice without it being at least a 2-parter. So I've watched it. I know you've seen it a couple times in the past 24 hours. I can't get enough of this film. We talked a lot about Infinity War, about how much we love that movie, and I know you do. I know I do as well. And I know the fans love it too. But for me, Endgame, even though the ending guts you and leaves you emotionally drained, and we'll get there, kids. I cried during this movie again upon watching it earlier today. I cried several different times, and I just get emotional. And this film means a lot to me because it's about, it's about families. It's about fathers and sons. It's about sons and daughters. It's about mothers, and it's just about making things right and trying to have that connection and trying to go back and hit the rewind button and trying to, make things right, to reestablish connections, to get that sense of family, to fix past mistakes. If only we had a rewind button, Greg, if only we had a way to do it. But, the heroes in the MCU had it, Endgame is epic. I honestly, I don't know how you feel. This movie gets better every time I watch it.
I would have to agree with you, Tom. I mean, I love this movie. I am in love with this movie. If it's a woman, I'm going to marry it right now as soon as possible. Man, I can't say enough good things about what they did in 2 hours, 40 minutes. But, man, it was all perfect. I think I told you on Facebook, I made a comment after we both saw it separately. I think I said, this is as close to perfect as a movie can get. And I think it's there, man. And like you said, it's about relationships. And I'd like to add, it's about redemption too.
Yes.
The heroes have fallen. They've lost, something, inside that's very meaningful to them. And they've lost a part of themselves, as Cap says sometime in this film. They want to get it back. So they have to go through whatever it takes. That is the line in the film, whatever it takes. And I love it, man.
It's so good. And so many quotable moments from this film. So many moments that, like I said, they make you emotional. They make you laugh. They make you angry. They make you want to watch them again and again and again. And as I said, I can't get enough of this film. And I think the reason it's so perfect is because it checks all the boxes. Infinity War checked a lot of boxes, and I think it checked all of them. But if a film could outdo its predecessor, this film outdid its predecessor. I mean, this was... I don't know if how many people consider Return of the Jedi to be better than Empire. I've heard that debate for years. I personally believe Empire is better, but I don't know how much of a debate there is about Endgame in which people are saying, "Oh no, Infinity War was much better." I don't know how many times I hear that, man. To me, Endgame, not that I'm stacking them and comparing them. If I had to stack and compare, however, for my own personal taste, I just think maybe the word better is the wrong word. Maybe the word for me is it outperformed in terms of what I expected. I expected this to be big. My God, it did so much more than I thought it would in terms of making me connected. When you walked into the theater to watch this film, I know your expectations were high because I know mine were. So how soon in the film did you realize, oh my God, this is more than I ever could have thought it would be?
Real early, when, you see the heroes get together and you see the addition of, one who had her own movie, like maybe a month before. Man, it's just like, you feel electrified when you sat down in the theater to watch that movie. I mean, your focus was completely on the big screen, the characters, what they were going through, the highs, the lows. I mean, and for me, this was much more, there was much more of a positive feeling in this one than in Infinity War. You could just feel it, man. That they had to redeem themselves, and that's what they did.
Yes, absolutely. Taking the fight straight to Thanos. Going back for, I like that you said redemption and not revenge, because they're not the Revengers. Thor made the joke, and the Revengers was actually a team in the Marvel Universe, and I think Thor was on that team, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been his team. But he made that joke in Ragnarok. And, there's a reason why this team of heroes is not called the Revengers. They're called the Avengers. There's a reason for that. And, Tony points that out as well. We'll get there, too. You and I could talk this thing to death, and we're going to. But I think I'm ready to get into the meat of this thing. And, folks, just like we did with Infinity War, we're breaking this thing down scene by scene. We want to do this film justice because I feel like it did justice for the fans. And I feel like it's only fitting. This more than likely will be a 2-part episode. You guys probably know that already by now, just by clicking the episode descriptions. You'll see it right in front of you. But like I said before, we want to do justice to this thing, and I think this is the best way to do it. So without any further ado, let's get into this. I am watching the film again for the second time myself right now. Well, second time today, I should say. The film opens with Hawkeye, who we did not get to see in Infinity War. The story was he was on house arrest, as was Scott Lang. And they were not present for Infinity War. Clint's family, he's outside. He's teaching his daughter how to shoot an arrow. She's practicing. He calls her Hawkeye. It's a very sweet little moment. He's got his family there. They're calling him. They're talking about, let's have dinner. Let's have the cookout, whatever it is they're doing at the picnic table there. and he looks back and his daughter's gone. And he looks for his family, they're gone. He's an Avenger, Greg. So you see on Jeremy Renner's face almost immediately, something's not right. This is not a look that maybe an ordinary dude would have. They go, okay, where'd you guys run to? Are you messing with me or what? This guy is a trained assassin, and he's an Avenger. He knows something's up.
Yeah, he's bewildered at this point. He's horrified because this is his family, and it's the most important thing to him in the world. And they've just vanished suddenly, and he has no idea what's going on. He's running around screaming. He's terrified. And I'd like to point out that, before his family vanished, he was teaching his daughter, to shoot a bow and arrow. She hits the bullseye. And to me, that's what this movie does in scene after scene. It hits the bullseye. So I think that set the tone for the movie.
Dude, that's actually a nice touch, man. I never would have pieced that together, but that's a nice touch. And honestly, you might know the answer to this, Greg, but I'm pretty sure that Hawkeye's daughter is a character in the MCU, or at least in the books, I should say. I haven't kept up with the actual Marvel Universe in comic form in a long, long time. I just haven't had the time to do it, and I've still got 6.5 long boxes in my closet of great memories that I'll always cherish and books that I collected over the years. I know you've got quite the collection yourself, and, I don't know if his family got involved like in another version of the Avengers at some point down the road, but, they could also, Greg, be laying the groundwork here for, another phase of the MCU at some point with his family and maybe his daughter taking up the reins as Hawkeye herself.
I wasn't even thinking about that. And, it makes sense. I'm not familiar with anything outside of Hawkeye, as far as his daughter possibly taking the mantle. But, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, that's fair enough, man. And, honestly, Hawkeye catches a lot of crap. He's the one Avenger that catches the most crap of anybody in this cast. And it's nothing on Jeremy Renner because he's fantastic. And listen, I was one of the guys that, I'll admit it, from day one, I kind of said, this guy's going to be Hawkeye. But, dude, he made a fan out of me within minutes of seeing him. He's just so good in this role. But, yeah, he catches the most crap. I think we're all kind of surprised he made it this long. The minute we heard about Thanos, we're like, well, if Hawkeye goes to space, he's dead. What's he going to do, shoot arrows at him? So, but he kind of did, so, But, yeah, he made it. And, spoiler alert, kids, Hawkeye comes out of this thing in pretty good shape. So, we go to space. The song Dear Mr. Fantasy by Traffic, Steve Winwood Band, great tune, great old song. A lot of the music that happens in these Marvel films, if Downey's involved, I would dare say he's the guy putting the music in because he's such a music fan himself. I mean, if you're talking AC/DC or Sabbath or whoever, then yeah, it's Downey doing it. So the song, for some weird reason, seems to fit the mood. And they are aboard a ship that we later, I don't know if you know this, but the ship later is revealed to be called the Benatar for Pat Benatar, 80s rock idol. So nice touch there. I kind of like that. I don't know if they ever mentioned that actually in any film, but I thought it was a pretty cool touch. So the ship is dead. It's dead in the water, folks. They're drifting in space. We see Nebula with Tony Stark. They're playing paper football on a table. It's hilarious. It's great. And this actual scene takes place 22 days after the snap. Tony decides to record a message for Pepper. The CGI is in full effect because Downey looks emaciated. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days, and that's what this is trying to get across to you. And plus, let's don't forget about the fact that, being in space physically will take a toll on your body. Now, the ship obviously has artificial gravity, so that's not really an issue for them. But, not only have they got nothing to eat, but as I said, the atmosphere around them looks to be maybe taking its toll on him. But, dude, talk to me about the message that he leaves for Pepper. He's got the Iron Man helmet. He records this video message. He doesn't even know she's ever going to get it. But, man, it seems like his last words.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it seems like he's saying goodbye to her, not knowing whether she's going to get the message or not. But it's important to him, that he do this. He's doing this for, his time with her, everything they've been through. So he feels like, he owes this to her. It's just his parting words, the last words to Pepper, and it's real emotional. I kind of almost teared up here a little bit. I think I shed maybe one tear, but more were to come later on.
Oh,
but yeah, early in the movie, this early in the movie, I mean, you don't expect to get that emotional response from a movie, and it's just like the helmet. I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me of Ultron's helmet for some reason. I don't know why. But
honestly, now that you mention that, when we first saw the previews and that scene was in the previews in the trailer, I thought that's Ultron's head. For some reason, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk about Tony and Nebula, the odd couple. Never in my wildest imagination would I have seen these two together, getting along, cooperating, working with each other. But I mean, they're all each other has, so they're, until the time is up, they're going to try to, make the best of the situation, which is really bad. And I love when they're playing paper football.
Yes.
And it just happens that Nebula wins. She's not used to winning because, as we know, her sister Gamora has beaten her time and time again, and the frustration has built up. So when she wins, beats Tony in paper football, she's surprised. I thought that was great.
Dude, that's another great callback, man. I never would have pieced that together, but yeah, because there was such a competitive spirit between her and Gamora to the point they were trying to physically kill each other, folks. This wasn't just, she beat me in tic-tac-toe. This was the real deal. So, yeah, I mean, good call, man, on that. It didn't even hit me, in fact, to that point. But yeah, I love what you said about these two. They are the odd couple. But what the best part about this scene is that Nebula is finding a humanity for the first time. Gamora has it, but Gamora is, flesh and some kind of blood, we assume. And Nebula is cybernetic. She's not all, flesh anymore. And, it's obvious in the way she speaks, her tone, her sound, her abilities, the way her body puts itself back together. But she's forced because Tony is such a good person that, yeah, she's finding her humanity. So, yes, a great moment. We know how this ends. She finds him asleep on the floor after he records the message. She puts him in the captain's chair, leaves him there, and she seems to be okay, and he is slowly but surely starving to death. He tells Pepper in the message they only have enough oxygen left till the morning, and that's going to be the end of it. So he wakes up thanks to a bright light in the window, and yes, it's Captain Marvel. She's found them. We move to Earth. Cap has shaved his beard after sporting it in the Infinity War. The Benatar returns. Captain Marvel is carrying the ship home because, of course, the ship, as we said before, is dead in the water. Pepper, Cap, Sam Wilson, Natasha, Bruce all run out to meet them. Tony tells Cap, I couldn't stop him, and I lost the kid. Dude, that's what started the emotional connection for me, was when he looked at Steve and he said, I lost the kid. It's the way he said it, like, I let him down. It wasn't, I let the world down. Steve, I let you down. It was, I lost the kid. And dude, that to me speaks volumes about how far this character came from the first Iron Man film to this film in particular.
Yeah, when we first, encounter Tony, he's kind of full of himself. He's all about that, being a celebrity, and, doesn't really care much about anything else. But his time with Peter Parker, Spider-Man, it has really enriched his life, besides Pepper, of course. Yeah, it's like we talked about before, this is the son he never had. I mean, they've really grown into that father-son relationship. And Tony is just, it's almost like it's killed him even though he's still alive. Something has died inside of Tony because he lost the kid. And you can look at him, and he's so sickly, that you really feel sorry for Tony in that moment, because he kind of takes a breath before he says it to Steve. And, man, it's just, oh, wow, yeah. You definitely almost really want to start crying at that point.
Oh, yeah, dude. That's the point. And for me, when I said, oh, God, I'm going to be a wreck by the time this thing's over. So, and I was, and I am every time, kids, every time. So Cap responds with, Tony, we lost. Okay, Cap sees the broader scope of this thing. Pepper runs up. She's highly emotional, obviously. She hugs him, Rocket sits down and holds Nebula's hand. Another great moment. And, you know, dude, a lot of the running themes for Infinity War, for the 2 episodes recorded about that film, was the fact there were so many pairings and so many great moments between characters that we ordinarily wouldn't see together. We get a lot of them here as well, and I love that moment. So we are inside the compound now, and this makes 23 days since Thanos came to Earth. The team tells Tony Thanos did exactly what he said he was going to do, because Tony's been he's been incommunicado this whole time. He's been out of it. Tony asks, where is he? They said they don't know. Cap says they've been hunting him for 3 straight weeks, deep space scans, anything, nothing. Can't find him. Cap asks Tony if Thanos left him, if he had any kind of idea where he might be, coordinates or anything. At that point, I'm thinking, you're asking this guy that? Like, I love Cap, but dude, like Thanos is going to tell him, I'm going to be at 300 degrees longitude. I mean, come on, man. Like, you know what I mean? He's grasping at straws at this point.
Yeah, and it really gets under Tony's skin, as you see, and he just vents. At this point, steam is coming out of his ears.
Yes.
He's venting at Cap. And, he says, well, we do our best work after the fact. We're not the pre-Vengers, we're the Avengers.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and, he just walks slowly up to Cap while he's talking, and he gets right in his face, and he takes that part of his chest out and puts it in, Steve's hands and says, you go put this on, and you run. Man, it's just like, and then he collapses. Wow, what an emotional scene. And, you really understand what Tony's been through, back on Titan. He's, it was almost like a stupid question, really. And,
Right.
Steve had no, I guess he was, like you said, grasping at straws, but it's probably a question, he should not have asked.
I don't often side with Tony when it comes to his criticism of Steve, but in that moment I kind of thought, yeah, I can kind of see where he's coming from now. It must be hard being that perfect all the time, being that noble. Like, all he's thinking of is, Tony, tell us, did he give you any idea? Like, I'm thinking, the guy just got back, man. Come on. Like, if he knew, he would have told you by now. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Like you said, an emotional moment. And Downey is fantastic. He's always pitch perfect, folks. That's the truth. He's pitch perfect around here as well. He actually brings up the events of Age of Ultron, where he reminds them that he said in the beginning that they needed a suit of armor around the world, and Steve directly opposed that. And, Tony warned them that they were going to lose, and they did. And Steve said, we'll do that together. So he essentially calls Steve a liar. Says, you weren't here. You weren't here when I needed you the most. We didn't tackle this together, essentially. But yeah, like you said, the pre-Vengers line, a great line. And this scene ends with Captain Marvel just walking off, saying, they're like, where are you going? She's like, I'm gonna go kill Thanos. We're like, excuse me, we usually do this as a team. Okay. And she says, look, I don't know where he is, but I know people that might know where he is. Okay. They say, well, we know space is your territory, but it's our fight as well. Nebula speaks up, and she happens to know exactly where it is. They find a planet that shows the same power signature they saw when Thanos snapped his fingers in Infinity War. They deduce that he's there. Thor, who has been blaming himself this whole time, finally speaks. He goes face to face with Marvel, calls for Stormbreaker. It leaps into his hand. He says, I like this one. Cap says, let's go get this SOB. And baby, we're down to business. But when we see them in Rocket's ship, and Rocket's being the comic relief that we expect him to be, and he's always great. And, it's such a great character. And it's just, a you need some comic relief in these films, especially Infinity War and Endgame, dude, because it's so heavy. So I love that right off the bat, he's already hitting his little jokes and one-liners. So really good stuff.
Yeah, and I want to go back to, the face-to-face Thor and Captain Marvel. It looks, before he speaks, it looks like Thor is angry and wants to, do some kind of harm, try to do some kind of harm to Captain Marvel. Like a face-off. But, he reaches out his hand, and Stormbreaker, comes. And I want to say that I kind of feel like, after watching the last 2 times, when Stormbreaker goes by Captain Marvel and, brushes her hair, and it's almost like foreshadowing that she's going to cut her hair. And it almost happened right there,
I don't know how you keep doing this, man. You've hit me with 3 items in a row that I never would have pieced together. Well done, brother. That's good stuff, man. It was so good, I almost cursed. And we try to keep this show PG where we can. So, yeah, good stuff. So, Yeah, man. And Bradley Cooper as Rocket, always great. Like I said, I can't say enough good things about him. He's just fantastic. So we are in Rocket ship at this point. Captain Marvel heads down for a recon. Cap is holding the compass that he carries with him all the time. It's got a picture of Peggy Carter in it. And Black Widow sees this and says, "This is going to work, Steve." He says, "I know it will, because I don't know what I'm going to do if it doesn't." Heavy.
I remember when they were showing previews for this film, and that was one of them. And that right there got me. I was like, man, this is going to be good. Yeah, like we talked about, it really exceeded our expectations, and I'm probably sure that it exceeded everyone's expectations. But, yeah, that was one of the lines that grabbed me, and I was like, man, I'm getting pumped up now.
Yes.
Yeah, the little thing with the picture of Peggy Carter, again, I imagine like a lot of soldiers, getting ready to go into battle, some kind of, war, they're probably looking at their best girl there like Cap was. So that was a great moment. It was really fitting because they thought that they were, going to have another knockdown drag out with the big guy.
You're batting 1,000, brother. Again, another great point there, dude. And yeah, very well said. Like you said, kids, at the end of the day, Steve, all right, Steve is, first of all, he's a great person. He's a really, really good man. And he is a role model. But he's a soldier. Steve Rogers has flat out killed people because he's a soldier. This is a war for him. And like Greg just said, what does he hold closest to his heart? That's the thing he's going to reflect on the most before going into a fight. Excellent point. Yeah, no doubt about it. So Marvel comes back, basically says Thanos is on his own, no armies, no defense, no anything. And they're like, great, let's do this. So they go down to the planet. We see Thanos picking fruit of some kind. His left side is wrecked from you. And we can kind of put two and two together where you deduce that he's wrecked from using the gauntlet twice. He senses something. It's Captain Marvel. She and the team burst in, including Bruce in the Hulkbuster armor and James Rhodes in the War Machine armor. And Thor cuts Thanos' left hand off. Right off the bat. Goodbye, hand. It's a very sort of Star Wars kind of moment. And, Vader's lost his hand. So, but there's no redemption for this Cap because he's just as cold-hearted in the end as he was in the beginning. And Cap questions him. Thanos says universe required correction. And after that, the stones serve no purpose besides temptation. Thanos used the stones to destroy the stones. When Rocket flipped the gauntlet over and he goes, oh no. I think we kind of put two and two together. I know I did. And it was like, oh my God, I think I know what he did here.
A friend of mine was talking to me, before we went to see the movie, and he's talking about, maybe a premonition of this. He was trying to figure out what was going to happen, and throwing out some theories. And this was one of them, like a second snap, the same signature as Infinity War. So Rhodey doesn't want to believe it. He's in denial. He's like, they've got to be around here somewhere. Let's just look for them.
Yes.
And, of course, Thanos says, the work is done. It always will be. I am inevitable.
Yes.
And at that point, it's like it's starting to sink in. And, it just makes sense. Maybe Thanos saw this coming. Maybe he figured, there would be some kind of, retribution that he might have to face. And it ended up being like a really smart move on his part.
It was because he really had no need for them. And he said it served no purpose beyond temptation. And I'm always thinking, his temptation or someone else? Like if someone else in the galaxy said, oh, hey, I heard the Thanos guy has the gauntlet. Let's just go hunt him down and we'll try to take it from him. I mean, I think they've pretty much proved that couldn't happen. I mean, thanks to Peter Quill, who kind of screwed the whole thing up. I just call it like I see it. Screwed the whole thing up. But, yeah. I mean, maybe that's what he was thinking. But there again, they call him the Mad Titan for a reason, dude. And, it's because you can't really explain all of his actions. So at that point, like you said, he's accepted his fate. He knows what's coming. And Nebula speaks up, and she's like, my father's many things, but not a liar. And he acknowledges her. And in the middle of the sentence, Thor takes his head off. Rocket says, what did you do? Thor says, I went for the head. Great callback to the end of Infinity War. And he's been wrecked with guilt for 23 days now. Suddenly, the film jumps ahead 5 years. I can't say I saw that coming. So, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right now, it is 2025. So, the next time we see a Marvel film, assuming it takes place after the events of Endgame. It will be the year, well, whatever year it is, it'll be 5 years from this exact date, which will be very interesting to watch. So we go back to New York. We see all the ships in the harbor around the Statue of Liberty, an empty baseball stadium. We see a support group. Captain America's in the support group. Well, Steve Rogers is. He's talking to a guy who's talking about having a date for the first time in a long time. The guy speaking to him is Joe Russo. He's one of the directors of this film. Cap is there. He's talking about going the ice in 45, says they have to move on. The world is in their hands. They got to do something with it. Otherwise, Thanos should have killed them all. And when he says those words, it almost feels like, hey, I'm Steve Rogers. People look up to me, whether I want them to or not. I'm a good person. I'm Captain America. And if anyone's going to say stuff, it's going to be me. But dude, you kind of saw in Chris Evans' eyes at that moment, did he really believe what he was saying? I really noticed that. And I was like, God, it kind of gave me chills, man. I'm like, dude, I don't even know if he believes what he's saying right now.
Yeah, it gave me chills also because, he felt like he was, the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and he was having to, try and keep everyone else's spirits up like he always does, and it almost seemed like, he was just, doing what the only thing he knows to do, and it's try to be that positive guy, that that's going to give you hope. And, it reminded me of his good buddy Sam in the second Captain America Winter Soldier, because he has a support group that he's, counseling.
Yes.
And it took me back to that movie, and it really, made me reminisce.
Absolutely. And another great callback. But yeah, very reminiscent of that film. And this film ties so completely to Infinity War. You could watch these back to back, and I've done it many times. And it's like a huge puzzle. I mean, they did these films basically at the same time. So that's why a lot of the scenes sort of seem to flow together so perfectly. At this point, we jump to San Francisco. This is something else that was given away in the trailer for this film. We know that Scott Lang is going to make a huge impact in this movie. We see an impound. We see a rat inside of a van on top of a control pad, but not just any van. It's the van from Ant-Man. A button is pressed, and exploding out of the back of the van is Scott Lang, a.k.a. Ant-Man. He's been trapped inside the quantum realm, of course. This last time we saw him was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. When he's walking, he's stunned by what he sees. He gets out of the impound. He sees nothing. I mean, the streets are full of trash. It's extremely quiet. There's no traffic. There's no nothing. There's a kid that rides by on a bicycle. He says, "Hey, kid, what happened?" The kid just stares at him. It's very Walking Dead at that point, dude. For me, it very much felt like a moment out of Walking Dead. And I'm like, if a walker came around the corner, it seemed like it would fit perfect. So imagine you're Scott Lang. You're coming back. You've been gone for 5 hours, technically, in your time, in your reality. You walk back into that. And so he sees the memorial, all these stones erected, and it's almost like Arlington National Cemetery. And it's very reminiscent of that. And he starts to go into a panic. He goes, oh my God, because he kind of knows what's happening. He sees all these names. He puts two and two together. He's searching for his daughter Cassie's name. But instead, he sees his own name. Now, that's the point where if I'm Scott Lang, I'm stepping outside of myself and having an out-of-body experience at that point.
A very bizarre moment, because you see your own name on a stone, with other people where it says "The Vanished."
Yes.
And, really weird. And I want to go back to what you were talking about when he's walking down the street and he sees the kid on the bike and, says, "What's happened?" You beat me to the punch there. I was going to say Walking Dead because I didn't think that until I watched it again last night. And then today, I was just like, yeah, that's a scene out of The Walking Dead. But, yeah. Going back to the memorial near, and you can see the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. So it's like that's like a monument itself. A great scene. I mean, and man, you really feel for Scott because he's in a panic mode right now, and he doesn't want to see his daughter's name on there because it's probably just going to break him at that point.
Oh, for sure. And this scene has a happy ending, folks, because we know that he does see his daughter. He races to the house, and we see her from a distance. This was the first time I truly cried. And when she sees him from across the kitchen and he's standing there and she knows automatically. But it takes her a minute and she comes out. I'm going to get emotional talking about it. She walks out of the screen door and puts her hands on his face and just breaks down. And he's like, Cassie? And to him, it's not like, oh my God, it's you. For her, it is. For him, as I said, he's been gone 5 hours. His little girl is no longer a little girl. She's 5 years older now, and she's a teenager. And for her, it's, I thought you were dead, dude. What a powerful moment. He lightens it up a bit when he says, you're so big. What a great moment, dude. I mean, he hasn't aged a bit, obviously, but she has. And, we have no explanation, folks, about what's going on. You can kind of put two and two together, but we don't know until he arrives. But we're getting there. We see the Avengers for the first time in the 5-year period here. We're back to Avengers compound. Black Widow looks a little bit different. We see her in a seat, and we see Captain Marvel, Rocket, Rhodey, Nebula, Okoye, all reporting in to Natasha via 3D hologram. We've seen this tech used before in the Marvel films, the Avengers films specifically. Okoye talks about an earthquake under the ocean. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. Are we talking about Namor the Submariner, perhaps? That's been thrown out there many times since this film. And maybe they planted the scenes, dude. What do you think about that little tidbit they just happened to throw in the film?
Yeah, they could be, like you said, sowing the seeds for the future of the Marvel universe, cinematic universe. And, that just gets you kind of, it gets your blood pumping a little bit more. You want to know what Namor's going to look like, how are they going to do it? So, yeah, it's, who knows?
And, I've learned to never say never with these people in the MCU, because if you do, you're out of your mind. Because they will prove you wrong. If you've ever had any doubts and you're a comic book fan, even if you're not a comic book fan, baby, they will prove you wrong. I've said for years that for an actor, a serious actor, to get the kind of shape it would take to portray a character who basically just wears underwear through the entire film. It's all he's wearing, underwear. Now, they've redesigned Namor over the years. They've given him like a more clothes to wear and stuff, but basically he's wearing pro wrestling trunks or swimming trunks all the time. But guess what? I will never say never. They could more than find someone they could carry off or pull off the attitude, the swagger, the holier than thou, I'm the king, and who are you land dwellers are in my way, that kind of stuff, and be physically in amazing shape and be able to keep that body for years on end. Because, brother, as you know, when you sign on for Marvel, you don't sign on for one film. You sign on for a multi-year contract. So whoever gets the gig of playing Namor is probably going to be around for, dude, we're talking upwards of 7 to 10 years maybe. I mean, a long time. So, yeah, in that amount of time, you're going to age. Your body's going to change. You're going to lose weight for some roles, gain weight for other roles. But, yeah, I mean, I've thought about this before, like, who do you get to do that? I'm not going to try to dream cast the part now, but like I said, man, I love the idea of teasing it. And even if they don't pursue it, they've got it there if they need it. And if they want to use it, they can. And yeah, just a great moment, man. So we also see Rocket. He rips on Captain Marvel's haircut here. It's a nice touch. She once again reminds them, as she did earlier in this movie, that, hey, these other planets didn't have the Avengers. They didn't have you guys. I've been out there basically trying to play, the cleanup guy. I've been the janitor trying to clean this mess up that was made because of Thanos. All good points. And, she's growing on me. I wasn't crazy about Captain Marvel, if I'm being honest with you. But I thought Brie Larson really came into her own in this film in particular. And I thought she did great in this film, actually.
Yeah, I think, she took the reins. I mean, and of course, I was glad to see that she didn't take over the film. I was hearing things, it kind of made me worry a bit. But, yeah, thank goodness that they didn't have Captain Marvel do more than what she was supposed to do in this film. I mean, she was there. She did what she needed to do to help the group out. And then don't forget, she's used to being on her own. She's so powerful, she could, blow anything up by herself. So she's having to try and work with a team now. So that's different for her. Absolutely.
And we're going to see here later on in the movie, folks, that, as Greg said, she is more than capable of handling herself. And there's only a couple of people in the MCU that I would put up against anyone, from Thanos to, I'll say it, Galactus. I don't care. Come at me. I mean, there's only a couple people I'd put up that are actually human, quote unquote human, to put in those positions. And there's only a couple of them, but Captain Marvel has to be one of them. But yeah, I'm like you. And honestly, to Brie Larson's credit, or in her defense, I should say, they didn't need her to take this film over. I don't think it was necessary. I think they did what they needed to do, but she was an important part of the machine, which is the biggest point here. So the rest of the characters kind of step away from the 3D imagery, and we are left with Rhodey talking to Nat about the Mexican drug cartel being wiped out. Says he knows who it is. He knows it's Clint. And basically she's telling him that she wants him to check it out. And he's like, Nat, basically, what are we going to do here? You know who this is. And she's getting a little emotional because her dear friend, the one that she has saved her life on multiple times, she saved his life on multiple times. She has a very, very deep connection with him. I mean, if Hawkeye had not had a family, her and Barton would have been an item. And I know we said that about her and Banner. I think that would have been an amazing little story had they actually gotten a chance to be together. But yeah, I mean, her and Hawkeye definitely would have been, because they've just got so much in common.
Yeah, they really connect on a deep level, that other people do not. It's like they're almost more than friends, but not. And yeah, it really, you could see, her eyes were starting to tear up, and she put her hands up. Yeah, that almost got me there right before Cap walks in to try and change the mood.
Yes, absolutely, Cap. And again, folks, the key to these films, why they work, especially Endgame, right when it gets at this heaviest point, they do something to lighten the mood, and it's perfect. So Cap comes in, Natasha is, as we said, a little emotional, and they kind of share a moment together. He tells Nat he's been saying to people they need to move on, but not them. It looks like not them. And she says, if I move on, who does this? Cap says, maybe it doesn't need to be done anymore. Which is a good point. And she explains that before the Avengers, she had nothing. But then she got that job, the family. She was better because of it. She said, even though they're gone, she's still trying to be better. Because basically, Cap was saying something to the effect of, the air's cleaner, the water's, the fish are coming up, and stuff. And I think it was dolphins, I think he said. And maybe humpback whales, maybe that's what it was. But she's like, if you're saying that, we're better off or whatever, I'm going to throw a peanut butter sandwich at your head. So again, a little moment of humor there. But dude, talk about the connection between Steve and Natasha, which I know we've covered before on this show in the Infinity War episodes. But, that one of these days when we do our Winter Soldier episode, or I think we'll go a little bit more in depth on these two. But these two have quite the connection as well.
Yeah, back in Winter Soldier, they kind of came together and gelled. And, there was a connection between those two as well. They were working together, so they developed a really tight relationship. And, one's there for the other, vice versa. And, there's some wit and humor there as well. So that, these two, yeah, they're definitely connected overall.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we this is good stuff, because this is the moment when we know that it's about to get real, okay? Because this is the moment when they hear Scott Lang's voice, all right? And Steve stands up, and he's like, is this, what did he say? Is this a recording? And she goes, no, this is right now. And we see it. And that's the moment they played in the trailer. And I'm glad we got a taste of it in the trailer, Greg, but I kind of hate they gave it away, because the moment kind of lost its impact for me. But it wasn't the end of the world, because we already knew Scott was alive and he was okay. But man, when that moment hit in the trailer, I couldn't wait to show that part of the trailer to everybody. And I'm like, dude, wait till you see this part right here. What a nice touch that was, man, for him to just pull up in that van and say, "Oh, I know you know Ant-Man. I know you know who that is. That's me." Okay, and he's trying to explain to the security camera who he actually is. So what a great part, man.
Yeah, vintage Scott Lang. He's kind of almost he's rambling on, like as he does, and I love Natasha's face. It brightens up, for the first time in this movie, and you can see, she's starting to feel a little hope there. Maybe, like, I don't know. if it's just see a familiar face and know that maybe there's something on the horizon here. Maybe we're starting to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, and folks, Scott is a big part of the reason why the Marvel films have such a great little bit of comic relief, because he is. Look, dude, you can't call yourself or be called Ant-Man and expect it to be straight-laced. I mean, this is Paul Rudd. We've said this before, Greg, that they put the best actors in these roles. I don't know if anyone else could have played Ant-Man except Paul Rudd. He is freaking fantastic. And I don't want to spend too long on this scene, but man, I mean, talk about how great he is in the role of Scott Lang / Ant-Man.
Oh yeah, I mean, when he gets in there and he's talking, he's pacing back and forth. So he's the wheels are turning inside his head. He's thinking about what he has just been through in the quantum realm. And, he explains that, he can't help think that maybe there's a way they can go back, in time or something. And of course, Cap says, what, like a time machine? And he goes, no. And he's trying to explain. He goes, well, yeah, like a time machine. He can't think of anything else to say. So, yeah, and of course he's eating Natasha's sandwich there.
What?
And, yeah, he's famished from being in the quantum realm. It's just a great moment because he's like, well, I don't know, it's crazy. Well, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and the widow's like, well, listen, I get emails from a raccoon, so nothing sounds crazy anymore. So,
yeah, I love that. Yeah,
that's good stuff. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. Before we get out of the scene, folks, Scott basically says, who can we talk to help about this? Well, there's only one cat that I know of. We go to a beautiful log cabin by a lake. It's a home, actually, and it's Tony Stark. He's outside looking for the daughter that we didn't know he was going to have in this film. Her name is Morgan. This is a direct flashback to Infinity War. When they were in the park, he's in the park with Pepper, and he tells her that he had a very real dream about having a kid with her, a son named Morgan. And that was a great little throwback, and they never really mentioned that again. But he was very adamant in that scene, Greg, if you remember in the park, where he's like, it felt very real. And I'm like, he had talk about premonition. He had a premonition of the child he was going to have by this film. What a great little touch that was. Yeah, in that scene, I'm thinking back to Infinity War, like you said, with his conversation when we first see him and Pepper, in the park, and he's telling her, that he had the dream about having a kid. Yeah, that again, we flash back, and I love that kind of stuff. And I also want to point out, you see the little chair, Morgan's little chair right there outside the tent. Tony somehow is able to sit on top of it. And I'm like, man, that was a funny scene. But now I'm thinking I know what they meant, maybe possibly meant by that. A little bit more foreshadowing. Tony is able to sit in that tiny chair, maybe foreshadowing, they're going to reduce the size of themselves to go into the quantum realm and go back in time. Great stuff, man. And you know what's great is even if you've been wrong about every single one of these, it doesn't matter, because as we have said before, movies like every topic that you and I cover on the show, it's all subjective. It's what you take from it, what matters to you, what clicks in your head. And I don't know for sure if that was intentional or not, but I bet if the Russo brothers could hear that, they would say, oh, dude, that's cool. I'd never thought about that. Or, if it wasn't the truth, well, that's a nice touch. Because, yeah, like you said, man, it does seem to fit. So we're talking to Tony here. They're pitching him the idea. He's not having this. He's just not having it, okay? And before we get to that, we see the rescue helmet for the character called Rescue, who Pepper Potts becomes. Basically, he tells Morgan that, he made this for her, but, basically she doesn't wear anything. She doesn't wear anything that he ever gets for her. So they go in the house. Again, they go in the house. They're talking about this. Actually, they're out on the porch, I should say. And he's like, you're talking about time travel. And Scott calls it a time heist. Tony says there's no logical, tangible way to do it. And for the second time since Scott came back, they mentioned Back to the Future, which is perfect. It's awesome. And Scott mentions talking to past selves or betting on sporting events. Tony stops him and points out, please don't tell me you're talking about Back to the Future. And Stark says, basically, I won't help. I can't, because while I want to bring the others back, I got too much to lose. And Cap's like, this is our opportunity at a second chance, basically. And Tony says, I got my second chance. He invites him to stay for lunch. He said, we set the table for 6. You can stay. If you're not talking shop, you can stay. But they're out. They're peacing out after this. They got to go head out to the next option. And man, it's your boy, the big green guy himself, Mr. Fix-It, the Green Goliath, the Jade Giant. Hulk like we've never seen him before in this diner. One of the single best moments of any Marvel film, of any film I've ever seen. I can't put this over enough to anybody listening or having watched it, whatever. Dude, the freaking Hulk, and he is intelligent. He's a mix of Banner and Hulk. Dude, talk to me about this moment.
When I heard his voice and I saw, the back of his head, the body, I was starting to smile. And then when they showed the face, man, I just kind of, started laughing. Not because it's ridiculous. I thought it was just great. The Professor Hulk, had a great run in the comics. And here they're doing justice to that character, that variation of the Hulk. And, it looks a lot like Mark Ruffalo. For the first time, it's like his face has been blown up, turned green.
Yes.
You can see the growth on his chin and everything. He's really come into his own right here. Has finally found that part of himself, that everybody loves, a combination of Banner and the Hulk. It's the best of both worlds, as he said. And, he's talking, and he said, I finally, was able to, get this done. He said the Hulk was not the curse, it was the cure.
Yes.
He finally came to terms with that. So, and, of course, the kids walk up and, want to take a selfie, and he hands his phone to Scott. And, it's like it's a great moment. I loved it.
And Scott's like, you want to take a picture with me? I'm Ant-Man. And they make it obvious they don't know who he is. And so Banner's like, oh, come on. They want to. Come on. Come on. It's all right. It's Ant-Man. They're like, no, it's all right. And he's like, just take the fucking phone. He's getting upset at this point. And the kids are trying to walk away. And he's like, oh, they say Hulk out together. So we assume that's kind of become a thing for him. And as they're walking off, it's such good stuff. He's like, Hulk out. It's like, Dab. Listen to your mom. She knows better. It's such good stuff because they can't get him to come back to the table at that point because he's kind of into the moment.
He's like a celebrity right now.
Yes.
He's really soaking it up. He's kind of like Tony. Maybe he feels like this is what Tony felt like, before he, found a purpose in his life.
Yes. Oh my God, such good stuff. So this for me is, we are back to one of those aha moments. And it's the first time, I don't know if it's the first time that we've seen one in this film, but it's one of those moments where I'm like, oh my God, do you know what this means? And it's the moment we realize that this thing could actually possibly happen. We have gone back to the cabin. We see Stark is actually contemplating this. He sees the pic of his father, but more importantly, he sees the pic of himself and Peter Parker, of course, played by the great Tom Holland, on his shelf. He goes to his study. He's crunching the numbers, and you can just see him tinkering. He's always described himself in these films as a mechanic. That's what he is, and he's tinkering. He's doing the research, and he's crunching the numbers, as I said, and he's basically seeing if it's going to be possible for time travel. He expects this to take a long time, and suddenly it doesn't. The render is completed, and he just falls into his chair. And he realizes, oh my God, this could happen. He says the S word. His kid hears him and repeats it twice. And she's like, long story short here, she bribes him with a juice pop. He goes to tuck her in. And I can't say that this moment grabbed me because if I'm being honest, I kind of thought it was a little hokey. I got a kid, okay? I can appreciate when my kid was a lot younger than he is now. And as cute as he was and stuff he would say to me. If I told you I went nuts over this, I didn't. But this line, Greg, comes back later in the film when she says, "I love you 3000." And I mean, it reiterated the point that Tony has a lot to lose if this goes wrong. So he tells Pepper he's figured out time travel, and she's like, "Oh my God." And, you know, she reminds him she has to. They got really lucky. He's like, "I know." He said, "I could stop, put a pin in it, put it in a lockbox and drop it to the bottom of the lake and go to bed." And she asks, "Yes, but would you be able to rest?" So we see that one of the smartest guys in these films has the answer. Man, it's off to the races at that point, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Tony, he's in that zone. You know, he's looking at the virtual diagram. You know, as you know, Tony does in all, you know, most of the films. You know, he's high tech, and you know, when it's kind of like after he realizes that it's possible. You know, it's overwhelming. You know, he didn't even think it was possible. So yeah, and his little girl, man, I love her. She's so cute.
Yeah.
She's adorable. And, you know, I love that face that she makes after he says the S word again.
Yes.
You know, she's kind of like, yeah, she pooches her mouth up, and that's great. That made me laugh. And then, of course, the juice pop, that was good because, you know, if you look in stores now in your freezer section, they have, or at least they did, they had the Avengers on a box of, you know, freezer pops. So, again, you know, another nice reference there. And I love I kind of love the line, you know, "I love you 3000." I thought, man, you know, it's like, that's out of this world. And Tony was blown away, you know. And then, of course, he makes the joke about Pepper being into the low 600 to 900 range, and it makes her laugh. Yeah, by this time, you know, she knows how to put up with Tony. She knows he's full of BS, and, you know, it's just better to take it laughing than anything else.
Yes.
And she's also, I don't know, this was odd to me. She's reading a book on composting, and he says, "What's new about composting?" And now that I've watched it, you know, more, I kind of think that was a reference to the dusting, you know, after Thanos snapped his fingers. I don't know why.
You're killing me with this stuff, man. You are surprising me to no end. Not because you're thinking of it, because you've had so many in a row. Like, that our jobs in this particular episode, I'm the secretary here. I've took all the notes, and you are the analyst. You are analyzing the notes and moving it forward for the course of the episode. So well done again. So yes, Tony's figured it out. We at this point go back to Avengers compound. Scott Lang is suited up. Hulk tells him they will send him back a week, let him walk around for an hour, then bring him back. And it's very obvious that he's like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. We never done this kind of thing before. And then he ends up giving Scott a thumbs up. It's all right, pal. We got this. Like, such good stuff. And this is Ruffalo's best performance in these Marvel films. I'm sorry. He absolutely nails it. Nails it in Endgame, dude. He's great. And we see Scott get zapped back. He comes back as a kid. They send him in again. He's back as an old man. They send him back. He's a baby. Hulk says, "Hey, it's Scott." Cap says he's a baby. Hulk says he'll grow. So
yeah, Ruffalo, he really got to explore the character here and you know, put a lot more humor into it because, you know, of course, you know, in the first Avengers film, you know, he's just the dumb Hulk smash, you know,
right.
character, and now, you know, he can inject, you know, some wit there, and it's great. You know, he's trying to hide the fact that, you know, well, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Maybe I stayed at a Hotel 8 last night, but here we go.
Yes, so they are on the verge of getting this right. They need one more piece of the puzzle, and that piece of the puzzle is driving in at 66 miles an hour. And if you caught the Back to the Future reference just now, good on you. It's Tony Stark. He asks Cap, why the long face? Let me guess. He turned into a baby. That's great. Like he already knew, right?
Yeah.
He says instead of pushing Lane through time, they push time through Lane. It's like it's tricky. That's a problem with this stuff. So he gets out of the car and he shows him a fully functioning time-space GPS. He tells Cap to have a shot at this, but he has his priorities, and it's his family. He shakes Cap's hand, and for the first time since, Age of Ultron, we see Cap and Iron Man on the same page. And it's crazy, and it took this long, but it took this long. So, yeah, it gets better when Tony opens the trunk of his car and brings out Cap's shield. He said he reminds him that his father made it for him, and he has to get it out of the shed before Morgan takes it sledding, which is a nice touch.
Yeah, I love that. It's two good friends being reunited.
Yes.
These guys are the leaders of the Avengers. Of course, we've known that for years. These two guys, they lead the way, and for them to have been split up for all this time, it wasn't right. The team got split up because of these guys, and to see them come back together and Tony present Cap with a shiny new shield. Oh man, that's an awesome moment. They're shaking hands. The team is back together, and right there, good things are going to happen from then on.
And you call them the leaders of the team. They are Lennon and McCartney of the Avengers. The Beatles would have been a really, really good band if it had just been John and George and Ringo. The Beatles would have been a really, really good band had it been just Paul, George, and Ringo. But it would not have been the same in either case. It would not have been the Beatles. It would not have been the same dynamic, the same flow, the same creative chemistry. It wouldn't have been the same. John needed Paul and Paul needed John. And that's what we have here. Paul and John were never the same, vastly different, but they always had the same goal in mind. That was to make great music. And these guys have the same goal in mind, and that's to save the world, to fight the bad guys, to win the day. And they may have different methods. They have different ideologies, but at the end of the day, they're both on the same page. And I like what you said. The team needs them. Without them, there's no Avengers. So again, another great moment. And folks, if you sense a recurring theme here, I'm glad, because there is one. This movie, like Infinity War, is full of amazing moments, and we just got another one here. Really, really good stuff. Tony asks if there's a team. Cap says they're working on it. We see Rocket Nebula, they show up. War Machine comes crashing down, looks at Scott and says, "What's up, regular sized man?"
Yeah, and Scott's about to eat his taco, and it's been blown to smithereens, because of the rocket ship landing. And, it's like he was in front of one of those big high-powered fans.
Yes.
And, of course, War Machine lands and, makes the crack. And here comes Hulk. Professor Hulk, and very nicely he hands Scott another taco. A nice moment there, a gesture of friendship, and it's just showing how far the character of the Hulk had come. Before, he would have been smashing, but now he's a caring, kind, gentle man.
And like you said, man, Hulk hands him a nice taco, and then as he's walking off, we see him in like the hipster bag and the zip up hoodie, and he's got the jeans and no socks or shoes. And that song's playing. It's a very, very quick moment, but oh my God, it cracks me up every time. And it's just so good. So at this point, we're off to see the third member of the Holy Trinity here. We've seen Cap. We've seen Iron Man. We have yet to see the God of Thunder. And it's off to New Asgard. It's the survivors of Asgard on Earth. We see Valkyrie. And Hulk is calling her the mean girl, I think. These two have a past. They've got a connection from Ragnarok. And it was great to see them on camera again together. Nice little moment. And Valkyrie flat out says, "He won't see you." And that's when they see the empty barrels, the empty kegs outside of this little house. That we know Thor's probably in there. And when we get in there, we see Korg and Meek from Ragnarok. Love these characters, as we know. Taika Waititi, who directed Ragnarok, who's a big part of the MCU, he voices Korg. I just got my Korg pop vinyl the other day, by the way. It's freaking awesome. He's got the Hawaiian shirt and the gamer headphones and the controller, and it's great. And we see Thor. At this point, it's the big Thorbowski. He's drunk. And man, is he out of shape, man. We didn't get this tease in the preview at all. And I remember being in the theater and people were losing their mind when the camera backed up and showed Chris Hemsworth as a fat guy. It was awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't, unveil this in the previews, because it was another great surprise, like the Professor Hulk. Thor has let himself go, you could say, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And, he's a drunkard, and he I don't know, the thing with Infinity War, him not taking Thanos out like he said he was going to do, it really messed with his head, and he lost all confidence. and he just didn't want anything else to do with that. He was done with it, and now he's just drinking himself into oblivion every day. And Korg and Meek are sitting there, playing the game, and that's great. He goes over and he punks out, what was it, Nude Boy?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. He says, he threatens him over, he says, like, I'm still the god of thunder, I'll come to your basement and
he's rip off your
arm off and
rip off your arms and shove them up your butt.
Yeah. It's a really funny character, and of course, right away, you make the connection to the Big Lebowski, Jeff Bridges.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it's real nice reference there, and it fit, man. It fits so well because I mean, Thor, like I said, he's lost all confidence, and he just wants to stay in a drunken haze at this point.
And he's using Stormbreaker as a bottle opener, which it happens very fast. But he's opening his beer with it. It's great. And Hulk puts his hand on his shoulder, and he's like, "You okay, pal?" And he's like, "Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be?" And Ruckus says, "You look like melted ice cream," which is so good. Such a great moment.
Yeah.
So the Hulk mentions Thanos, and for the first time we see Hemsworth. He made it real, and he had this look on his face, and it was the same look he had. We saw him earlier in this film where he's the failure. He didn't accomplish what he was supposed to do. He considers himself to be the strongest member of the Avengers. Despite what the Hulk says, he always believes himself to be the strongest member of the team, and that he let them down. He let the world down. He let the universe down. He grabs Hulk's jacket. Hulk gives him this look. It's priceless. And it's like, come on, dude, what are you doing? You know you don't want to do that. I'll kill you. I'll smash you. You don't want to do that. And it's almost like the same conversation they had in Ragnarok when he's like, "We had a fight. Well, who won?" And Thor goes, "I did, easily." And Banner's like, "That doesn't seem right." And he just keeps moving the topic along because he doesn't want to know the Hulk smashed the life out of him. So, yeah, great little moment here again, folks. Moments abound in this film. And Hulk gives him a pep talk. He reminds him that Thor helped him. He was the one that stood up to help him when he needed someone. And then Thor just gets this look when he's in that chair. And dude, God bless, that moment for me killed it. Like, just that moment, as much comedy as there was in that scene, it was sucked out of that scene when you see that look that Hemsworth has on his face in that chair. When it's like he's contemplating the mistake that when he should have took Thanos' head, when he should have went for the absolute kill shot, and he let the whole universe down. And man, the entire story of Infinity War is written on his face in that moment. Bodysuit aside, beer aside, to me, what a great moment that was for him in this movie.
Yeah, it got real serious real fast. Again, everything that had happened transpired before. It flashes through his mind while he's sitting in the chair. And, he's still swigging the beer. He's finishing it off. He's, throwing empty bottles here, this way and that. And, he's eating something, and it reminded me of Drax eating a Zargnut in Infinity War. That's what it reminded me of. And, how Thor had the connection with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And, he's probably thinking back at that moment. And, of course, Rocket says, there'll be beer on the ship.
Yep.
And of course Thor says, what kind? So I think in that moment he was sold. It's like, I've got to do something. I can't just sit here and go on like this. This is not who Thor was, and it's not who I want to be truly.
Yeah, another great moment, and it's a great little segue. And at this point, we go somewhere we didn't imagine we were going to go. We go to Tokyo. And Ronan is on the hunt. Now, for anyone that is a comic book fan, you're a fan of Ronan, and you've seen Ronan in the books. Ronan was in the new Avengers. It was a great mystery for a long time as who is Ronan? Who is it? And we see him here. We know this is Clint. We can tell. And there's no bow and arrow this time, kids. He's got the samurai sword, and he's absolutely slaying. He's fighting the Yakuza one member at a time, and he basically tells this guy, this gang leader, is like, I'm taking you out. No more hurting people. And he looks around and he goes, "I'm hurting people?" And he's all these guys, all these mobs just laying around dead. And man, Barton he has no mercy. Cuts his throat, plunges his sword down into this guy. And they left that part out, obviously, but you know what he did. And, at that moment, he stops because he knows someone's behind him. Takes the mask off, and it's Natasha. And not for nothing, but Natasha kind of let him kill this guy. I mean, look, I'm just saying, Natasha's an assassin as well, and I'm sure this guy had it coming. But at the same time, it's like, you kind of just watched him do this instead of saying, Clint, wait, you're losing your humanity, right?
And I also want to point out the fact that the last couple of times I watched this, or maybe even the first time, it made me think of the John Wick movies, how violent it is, and yes. The neon signs there in Japan. And, honestly, I've never read the Ronin character, so this was new for me. I was like, who is this? This was at first, this was kind of, out of bounds for me in the film. I was like, what's going on here? Mm. Until he starts talking, he says, he knows about Thanos, what he did. He says, the rest of the world got Thanos, you get me. And I'm starting to think, well, man, this could be Hawkeye right here, but he's really changed, completely changed the character. And, he's samurai swords and stuff. And, yeah, he's real violent, and he's trying to get back something that he'll never get back. He's trying to find his way back to his family, but, they're gone, and he's just trying to make the world a better place, in spite of that.
Yes, and as you said, it's hard to know who it is because he's completely changed his fighting style, at least from what we've seen in the films. But Greg, to your point, to anyone listening, if you've never read the new Avengers, and Greg, I will highly recommend you get a hold of the trade paperbacks because they're excellent. Such good writing involved there. Some of the best Avengers stuff, Marvel stuff I've ever read. It's awesome. So Nat's talking to him. She's really the only one that can reach him. And he says, you shouldn't be here. She says, I could say the same thing to you. She said, killing all these people won't bring your family back. She said, I think we found a way. And he says, don't give me hope. And she's like, I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you sooner. So it's a great aesthetic. They're in the pouring rain. What a great scene it is. We are back to Avengers compound. We see what I call Bro Thor. He's cracking open a beer to a Rolling Stones song. He's walking. They're all going to this little meeting area. Tony gives him the classic line, on your left. He says, and he says, one side, Lebowski, which is good stuff,
Again, it goes back to the original Avengers when he referred to him as, Point Break. He says, mean swing, Point Break. Yes. Talking about Patrick Swayze in the film Point Break with Keanu Reeves, by the way. Yeah, it's vintage Tony, his relationship with Thor, never been, the best of friends. You can see that back in Age of Ultron when Thor reacts to, what Tony helped to conspire with Banner to do. They unleashed Ultron. He picks him up like he's going to start pounding on him or something. But, yeah, they've always had that relationship, and I love it, man.
It's great stuff. And in Ragnarok, of course, Thor's trying to use a password to bring the ship alive. And he's like, world's strongest Avenger, God of Thunder. And finally he's like, Point Break. And, of course, it works. Because why wouldn't it? It's because, freaking Stark set the whole thing up anyway. It's his ship. So at this point, they're suiting up Scott with the PIM. He's got the PIM particles. He's ready. He's complaining about Hulk. He's like, you're doing this all like the Hulk. You got to knock it off. You got to be careful. Then he accidentally uses one of the shots he has. So now they only have one attempt at a test run. Clint steps up. He says, I'll do it. So they switch out positions. Hulk tries to explain time travel to them in one of the funniest little moments in this entire film. He's like, look, time travel doesn't work that way. And they're like, who says who? And they're mentioning all these films to him. But and all this stuff, and it's really good stuff to him, right? And Rhodey's mentioning all these films, and all of them, which apparently are not right. And Hulk points out, he says, if you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your present becomes your past. And it took me a long time to grasp that, but the point is there, dude. If you really think about it, get Back to the Future out of your head if you can, and take it for what he said. And I'm like, okay, now this starts to make sense. But I'll admit, at that time in the theater, I had no clue what he was talking about. Couldn't piece it together.
Yeah, same here. I was confused, by what he said. I mean, it was kind of really fast, and it went right over my head. So I was like, well, he obviously knows what he's talking about. He's Professor Hulk. Yes. And I want to point out the irony of Ant-Man Scott Lang talking about how careful they need to be with the pin particles, and then he wastes one there.
Right.
And of course, when he's talking about how careful they need to be, Hulk's sitting there. He's kind of looking at him, like shaking his head, like, "Oh yeah, okay." I thought that was
oh, great! That look on his face is perfect.
Yeah. Rhodey says, "Calm down, Scott."
Right. Yeah, Hulk's got that look like, okay, really? All right, keep talking. Yeah, he's like getting agitated with him. And then so Scott ends it with, "So Back to the Future is all BS," and just the way he says it, it's great stuff. But look, folks, Scott's a loser. Scott Lang's a loser. And he doesn't mean to be, but he is. But that's what makes it great. Because not every one of these heroes can be, "I'm Steve Rogers and I say all the right things." It's not realistic. You don't want a team full of Steve Rogers. You need a team full of a different, assorted cast of characters, different personalities, different life experiences, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking. And Scott Lang is an ex-con, folks. I mean, he doesn't have the same train of thought as some of these guys have around him, but great stuff. So Clint gets sucked up into the quantum realm, travels back to his home. His family is there. He hears them. He rushes for the door, but then he gets zapped back to our present time. So at this point, we're ready to roll, Jack. This is where the movie starts to get intense for real, because this is where the time travel starts. Cap is leading the way, heading up the troops. They're searching the timelines for the stones, and this is where the detective work starts to kick in. They throw it to Thor. It's like, and then this odd little music plays. He's got these shades on the chair. And one of them says, pretty sure he's dead, right? But he's asleep. he's passed out drunk, probably. So by the time they get him to come around, he's talking about the ether. He gets emotional when he's talking about Jane. Talks about how the ether infected her and took her to Asgard to help her. And he talks about his mother, who's dead now. And then he's like, you want to take a break? He goes, "No, I want the Bloody Mary," which is awesome.
Yeah, this scene, I picture him in a hangover, and he's trying to explain, he's trying to be smart, but he's rambling on about this and that, and people, the only one that's really paying attention, is trying to take it in is Scott Lang, like you said. Scott Lang's, he's paying attention there, he's shaking his head. He's enjoying this, but everybody else is kind of like, "Oh, this is embarrassing."
Right. Yeah, like, that's true.
Yeah, it's like anytime you want to cut it,
Yes, great stuff, man. So they're trying to piece together the timeline because they know they have all at some point been into contact with these stones, because they've all at some point had some kind of connection to them, okay? And at some point, Natasha points out, wait a minute, if we pick the right year, there's 3 stones in New York. And they're all like, "Oh my God, why didn't I think of this?" So basically the math here, kids, is this. There's 3 in New York, 1 in Asgard, 1 on Morak, and 1 on Vormir. So Cap recaps the plan. And as I said before, this is where it gets real. 6 stones, 3 teams, 1 shot. They come together. He's narrating the moment. And this goes back to my initial point of how he was giving the speech in the group therapy session and the support meeting when he kind of didn't believe it. He believes his words now. He's come full circle because he's like, now I have a mission. The mission's real. I know what we have to do, and I feel like we can do it. So he is great at this. And Rocket says, he's pretty good at this. He's pretty good. And Scott's like, right? And it's just such a great little moment, man. I love this moment to death.
Yeah. Scott Lang is the biggest fan of Captain America. We saw that in Civil War.
Yes.
When he got out of the van, and he was like, "Wow, Captain America! I can't believe it." He kind of like sizes him up and everything. So Scott Lang he's the big fanboy of Captain America. To him, it's he's the be all end all. And
Yes.
I love they're walking up. Slow motion walk, and you can hear Cap, going through the kind of the pep rally, if you will. He's trying to get everybody focused, what they need to do. And Cap always has the plan. You want to know what to do, you go to him, and he's got it all figured out.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah, good stuff. So we're ready to roll. They're on the platform. They're suited up. They're all ready to go. They're synchronizing here. They got their space-time GPS here, folks. On your shelves this Christmas. Can't wait to get mine. So Black Widow gives the sweetest smile. And she says, "See you in a minute." And we know what happens later. We don't know at the time. but what a moment this is. And I'm going to go on the record here and say Scarlett Johansson is the perfect female. I don't really care who disagrees. I don't really care. She is a queen among men, folks. She is graceless with her presence. I don't even care. Come at me. We're going to do a whole show on Scarlett Johansson, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be my favorite show ever because I'm in the bag for this girl. I can't help it. She's so great. And, you know, in the world of pro wrestling, we have said many times, The Undertaker never would have worked had it not been Mark Calloway. You could have gave that gimmick to any other 7-foot tall guy, and it wouldn't have worked. I don't know if anybody could have played Black Widow except Scarlett Johansson. She is absolutely perfect here.
Oh, you have to fall in love with her. I mean, there's no other choice. She's, she's everything that you want in a woman. She's strong, but gentle. I mean, she's got the best of both worlds. She can protect you and, at the same time, you know, warm your heart with that smile. I mean, she's absolutely beautiful. I mean, that red hair.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. She's a dream.
Yes. And listen, again, folks, I'm going to be, if I do nothing in the course of any podcast I've ever done, I give it to you straight. I'm honest with you. I'm going to tell you the truth. I wasn't sold on her in Iron Man. I just wasn't. I kind of thought, what are they doing? This is not who she is. This is not Tasha Romanoff. And I don't know. She was an amazing body in a tight skirt and a really tight blouse. And I thought, what are they doing to her? And then, of course, I didn't give enough time. The story played itself out and we saw the truth. But at the time, I didn't know that. So, like, you know, there's something to be said here, kids, for patience. Let the story play out. I'm glad I did eventually because, as I said, she's perfect. So the time travel has begun. We flash back first to the fight for New York in 2012, the first Avengers film. This is where the nostalgia begins, kids. It's great stuff. This is Cap, Tony Scott, and the Hulk. There's a great little moment. They're in this, like near the city street. They see the Hulk of the past smashing. And of course, before this, we get this famous circle of the heroes as the camera's rotating around them. And they've got their back-to-back moment ready to fight. What a great moment this is. If you're a Marvel Comics fan, oh my God, talk about that.
Before Infinity War or Endgame, I think I told you one time the first Avengers movie was my favorite of all, you know, up until this point. And so to see them go back to 2012 and the fight for New York, that blew me away, man. To go back and pay tribute to that movie, you had to do it. To see Cap in the old costume there and the Raging Hulk, you know, smashing stuff, you know, cars and whatnot. It's great because Cap says, okay, we need to go and do what we need to do and maybe smash a few things along the way. And, Hulk's like, says, it's a little gratuitous, but oh well. And he rips his shirt off kind of like Hulk Hogan, you know.
Right.
That's what I thought. Remember Hulk Hogan used to rip his shirt off. So there he goes, and he's kind of like, you know, trying to get into the character, but it's, you know, it's funny. He's like, you know, growling, and I think he hits the cab and then tosses a motorcycle. Yeah, it's great, man.
Yeah, he's faking it. He's like, oh, yeah, because he's trying to. For lack of a better term, he's trying to Hulk up, and he can't quite get there because now he's not the same guy anymore, right? So great stuff, man. From here, he goes to the top of the Sanctum Sanctorum. It's on Bleecker Street, of course, the future home of Doctor Strange. He sees the Ancient One, and he says, I'm looking for Doctor Strange. She said, you're about 5 years too early, I think?
Yes. And
she tells him that Stephen Strange is still a physician. He's conducting surgery across town. So she already knows the future. And he makes it clear he wants the time stone. She makes it clear it's not going to happen. So she does that soul push that pushes his soul out of his body. So we're going to come back to that in a click. We zip to Asgard in 2013. Hulk and Rocket are sneaking around. And as we know, folks, these are the events of Thor 2, The Dark World. Hulk and Rocket are sneaking around. They are formulating a plan to take the ether from Jane. We see Thor's mom from a distance, Frigga. And we know this is getting bad for Thor because he reveals this is the day she dies. So Rocket tries to slap Thor back to reality, literally. he tells Thor, you gotta snap back into it, man. You gotta focus. I lost the only family I ever had. You know, Quill, Drax, Gamora, even the chick with the antenna, which is great because he's talking about Mantis, right? So yeah. Thor's crying. Rocket's like, are you crying? He's like, no, yes. And he's all emotional, right? So it's a big departure from last time we saw these two together in Infinity War because they kind of formed a kinship. I think you mentioned during that episode that, and you know, now the roles are kind of reversed. Rocket is the one who's all business, and Thor has completely lost focus here. But, you know, they're there to get the ether, which, is, of course, is actually the reality stone. And there's a lot more to get into here. We'll get back to it for sure. From here, we go to Morag in 2014. This is the events of the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. We see that Clint and Natasha are off to Vormir. And then we see Nebula and Rhodey. They remain. Clint mentions Budapest as they're in the ship, which is a nice callback to the first Avengers film because she says something to the effect of, you know, this reminds you of Budapest. And like, you and I remember Budapest very differently. So it's great that he mentions this here. Nice little touch.
Yeah, he says we're a long way from Budapest. As you know, there's zipping through space there on the way to Vormir.
Yes, good stuff. So Nebula mentions that her past self with Gamora and Thanos are looking for the stones. Some foreshadowing again, folks. We get a lot of foreshadowing in this film. A lot of hints dropped about what's going to happen in the future of this movie. We see Gamora, and speaking of the devil, they appear. We see Gamora and the Nebula of the past talking about the stones. Thanos has found it on Morag. We finally see Thanos again. First time he's appeared since Thor took his head off. He says that Ronan has found the Power Stone. Suddenly, Nebula breaks down. She shows a transmission from the other Nebula because they're inhabiting the same time and space. They're starting to get their wires crossed, literally. And they see her and Rhodey together on Morag having a conversation. Of course, Nebula doesn't know what's going on. How could she? This is, to me, where I'm like, oh, crap. Because if they know, now it's going to get serious, right? So you had to know that this thing wasn't going to come off without a hitch. Our heroes were going to encounter some resistance along the way. And they make it abundantly clear here that resistance is going to come in the form of Thanos and his army. We kind of know it's going to come eventually.
Nebula puts the entire mission in danger because, I mean, you know, unwittingly, you know, she goes along and you don't know that she and her past self are going to share transmissions there. And that's what ends up tipping off Thanos. So, yeah, and in a way, she nearly, messed things up.
Yeah, and it's like we said, through no fault of her own. This Nebula that we know of this time, of our present time, as we said earlier in the review of this movie, is that she's getting her humanity. And, you know, the past Nebula doesn't know anything about that, obviously. Because of the two sisters, Gamora was the one who was always trying to have some sort of connection, some sort of, you know, some kind of bond to this person or to this alien, whatever you want to describe her as, this cyborg, I guess. But yeah, it's a big deal. Like you said, dude, she basically jeopardizes the mission. And again, kids, we'll come back to this. But at this point, we jump back to New York in 2012. Tony is in Avengers Tower, hiding from the past Avengers. It's that famous moment when, you know, Loki looks up and he sees them all staring at him, pointing weapons at him. And he's like, I think I'll take that drink now. Great moment.
Yeah, that's why I love this movie so much, and you know, it just did such a great job of paying tribute to all the movies that had come before, and you know, just like nostalgia, you know, makes you want to go back and watch them again.
Absolutely, yeah. Which I've done. I know you've done recently too, because they're just all so great. And kids, if you can't figure this out by now, Greg and I are in the back for these films. I'll admit it, guilty as charged. So. We get a great line here that continues to play out later in the film as well when Tony says, you know, Cap, that suit doesn't do anything for your ass. And Scott mentions, I disagree. That's America's ass, which is great stuff.
Again, you see Scott Lang, you know, he's such a fan of Cap, and he's not going to let anybody say anything bad about this guy.
Right. He could have been Bucky. How cool would that have been? He's a little goofball. But man, I think you're like, I'll do it. I'll be glad to wear the outfit and the domino mask. I'll be Bucky all day long. So yeah, but really good stuff here. And we see different moments of different films becoming pieced together here because we see S.H.I.E.L.D. show up and we don't know what this, we didn't know this at the time, but they're actually Hydra agents. they show up to take the scepter from the team. And Hulk tries to get on the elevator with the original Avengers from the past, but they won't let him on. They said, take the stairs. He's not happy about that. And instead, we see Cap ends up on the elevator with the Hydra agents, who we know to be S.H.I.E.L.D. at this time. And Lumlow's on there, who eventually becomes Crossbones. And it was his suicide, basically, that brought about a lot of things that happened and had to start holding the Avengers accountable for their actions, which led to the events of Civil War. So this scene is very reminiscent of Winter Soldier. They know something is up. Cat tells him he's got a call from the director. That's the director that we know, played by Robert Redford. He says he's running point on this. And they're like, well, I don't know. We need to check on this. And basically he gets into the ear and he says, Hail Hydra. I'm like, shut up. And dude, this to me, I don't know if I want to call it a middle finger, but this was a moment to me done in the course of the script, because at the time there was a huge controversy going on about Captain America was actually a Hydra agent, and he's been Hydra this whole time. And it blew up in the comic books, and I know you and I were probably talking about it at the convention one year when this went down. But man, it was everywhere, and hardcore longtime comic book fans were irate at even the suggestion that Steve Rogers had truly been Hydra this whole freaking time.
Yeah, I remember a friend at work, talking about the storyline, and I was like, had that a confused look on my face, and I was like, no way. And when I saw this part in the film, I thought about that storyline where Rogers has been, a Hydra operative all this time. And, I thought it was, I guess it was a little, reference to that.
Yes, absolutely. That, and like I said, I don't know if I would call it a middle finger to the fans, but I think it's something they threw in for the heck of it. And honestly, sometimes you don't need another fist fight in a film. I mean, they've got a lot of action going on here, and Cap, for a change, just used his smarts instead of using his fists, which this is something the 90-pound Steve Rogers weakling would have done, because he couldn't have defended himself to begin with. He's like, screw it, I'll just use my common sense. Street smarts is what this is. And it was perfect for the moment. It's really good stuff. So he leaves the elevator with the scepter, which of course contains the Mind Stone. And my only note on this next scene is Hulk hates the stairs. Because he does. So that's all I got for that. So the Avengers get off the elevator. They run into Director Pierce, of course, as we said, played by Robert Redford. He wants the case, says it's S.H.I.E.L.D. property, has been for years. It's the Mind Stone. Ant-Man has snuck into Tony's chest per the plan. He's into the arc reactor, and he has disconnected a cable, giving what Stark appears to be a heart attack. Everyone is genuinely concerned. Even Redford's character, he's like, oh my God, are you okay? So the whole thing stops as this is happening. Hulk busts out of the stairwell and levels the present day Tony Stark, who had grabbed the case. The Tesseract containing the Space Stone pops out of the case. And Loki sees it, looks around, no one's watching, he grabs it, and poof, he's gone. So, yeah, Thor uses Mjolnir. He decides, I'm going to try this, see if it works. And he sparks Tony back to life, and everything's fine. And, dude, when Loki disappeared, I'm like, oh, crap. Like, in the theater, I'm like, oh, crap, what now? Because if anyone's going to make off with it, of course it's the God of Mischief, right?
Yeah, he's a real opportunist, and he saw the Tesseract in front of him, and he's always kind of had a close connection to it. We saw that in Infinity War, and when he disappears, kind of like Thanos did at the end, it's like, I wonder where he went. There's a lot of mystery there, but yeah, I want to talk about Scott Lang, going inside Tony, to disconnect something there and cause a distraction. Yeah, he says, "Is that body axe spray you're wearing?" He says, "Yeah, I kept one on me just in case." He goes, "How about we focus, Scott?"
Oh, it's good stuff, man.
And how ironic, Tony, being the voice of reason before all this began, the time heist, was talking about how impossible it was, and he ends up, being the one that kind of blows things, for them, just that one shot there, and just like you could see him after the Hulks, knocked him down and knocked the Tesseract out of his hand. He says, "We blew it."
Oh man, yeah, good, another good call, dude. The fact that he was against this from the start and said it couldn't be done, and then of all the people to screw it up, it was him. I mean, you could blame Banner if you want to and say it's the Hulk's fault, but at the end of the day, like you said, the point is they lost the stone, and it's basically over. At this point, we get one of the coolest scenes ever. We see the past Captain America run into the present Captain America, and the past Cap thinks that this guy is Loki in disguise, and they get into a fist fight, knocks him down. The past Cap says, "I could do this all day," and the present Cap's like, "Yeah, I know." In other words, I've heard it, I've said it, move on, which is very funny. And they're evenly matched. They can't, neither man can get an advantage, which makes perfect sense. And when they're on the floor, Cap's compass opens, and the past Cap says, "Where'd you get this?" And he's got him like in a chokehold, and he says, "Bucky is alive." And that causes him to release him. Cap uses the scepter to knock the other Cap out. He's standing over top of him, and he delivers the great line, "That is America's ass." So, yes, the line has made a comeback again. What a great moment.
Yeah, this is one of the best moments in the movie. There were a lot, like you said, but yeah, for Cap to run into his past self, it's one of the few times you've heard Cap cuss.
Yes.
And it's not normal for him, so you know it's something big. And, to come face to face with yourself, sometimes we talk about that, a dual personality. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but sometimes you do have to come face to face with yourself, and you do have to do battle with, what you've done or whatever. And this is what made me think of that. Cap has to face himself years prior.
Yeah, it's kind of like Luke and the tree on Dagobah, right? It's kind of similar to that.
That's it.
You're kind of running, as you said, running into what you really are, or maybe in this case, your actual self to begin with. So, yeah, as we said, kids, we try not to curse on this show, but sometimes you got to deliver the line. So, as we said, we want to do justice to this film. That's what we're doing here, okay? So, we are back to the rooftop now, and the Ancient One is talking about the Infinity Stone. She's having a conversation with Banner, not the Hulk this time, and she's explaining that the Infinity Stones control the flow of time. If Banner takes the Mind Stone, it will destroy her reality, destroy everything that she knows, and everything will fall apart. Banner says, yes, technically, but if we can return the stone chronologically where they belong, all the stones, then it will be fine. And she's hesitant. She's basically saying, it's not going to happen. You've lost your mind. Until Banner says, why did Strange give the stone away to begin with? And Tilda Swinton, who plays the Ancient One, best moment by far for her, in my opinion. Dude, she does this double take as if she'd just been told that, someone had died. That she's like, what did you say? And that was a very subtle thing, but man, very powerful at the same time. She just kind of stops and hesitates. What did you say? And he's like, yeah, he gave it to. And she's like, he willingly gave it to him? And he's like, yeah. And she said, and so she immediately gives it to him. Doesn't hesitate anymore. So look, Strange was meant to be the best of us, so he must have done it for a reason, is what Hulk finishes the line. So she zaps Banner back into Hulk's body, and she says, takes his hands and says, I'm counting on you. We all are. Everyone is. Great moment there. I think it was pitch perfect for the scene. So good. And she's so smart. But she didn't see that as even being a possibility. Because how could she? She couldn't imagine Doctor Strange, who was going to replace her as a Sorcerer Supreme, giving the stone to the Mad Titan. But then in that moment she realizes, again, this must have happened for a reason.
Yeah, it's not in her character to be surprised or amazed at anything, because of, she's a Sorcerer Supreme. And to get this information and make her a deer in the headlights, which is what she was, it was a very powerful moment. And like you said, it's almost like somebody died. So to have Bruce tell her this, you don't see her get shocked or amazed too often, but this was the moment.
Oh yes, for sure. So from here we go back to Thanos' ship. We see the Ebony Maw. They're inside Nebula's mind. Maul says she's sharing a consciousness with another Nebula from 9 years in the future. Thanos is searching her mind for clues to what's going on. They look into her mind and see her with the Avengers. They set course for Morag. And again, they have no idea what's happening here, folks. We're back to Asgard here. Thor's mom, Frigga, sneaks up on Bro Thor, as we call him. She knows something is up, and he tries to lie, but she can see. She says, I was raised by witches, boy. I see with more than eyes. Such a great stuff. Renee Russo, again, great in this role as well. She's fantastic. He's crying again. He's emotional. He wants to talk to her. We see Jane for the first time, and Rocket sneaks up to take the ether. He's got the injector there. He's going to take the ether from her, which we know he eventually does. Natalie Portman, of course, is Jane here. Thor's telling her the story of Thanos in the future. She's trying to counsel him when Rocket runs up. Thor wants to tell her about her future, wants to tell her that she dies that day. And she's like, I don't need to know. It's not my business to know what's going to happen. I don't want to know. She won't have it. And Rocket says, we got to go. But first, Thor needs Mjolnir. He sticks out his hand because he knows the hammer's there, and bam, it's there. And he's like, I'm still worthy. And Rocket's like, oh, God.
This part of the film, this was the first time that Thor actually regained his confidence. He seemed like the old Thor, and that was a great moment. And, just to see him smiling and laughing, you didn't see that before. The whole scene was great.
The best actors are cast in these parts. Again, doing a fantastic job. So from here, we're back to Morag. We see Star-Lord, and he's dancing around. Great stuff. The first Guardians film. He's got the Walkman on. And then we see Rhodey and Nebula watching from a distance, who can't hear the music. And Rhodes says, so he's an idiot. And she's like, yeah. I mean, she just does it very deadpan. Nebula's very deadpan, right? So they pop up out of nowhere. They knock him out, open the chamber. They take the Power Stone. They sync up to leave. They've accomplished their mission. It's all good. But suddenly, Nebula is down because Thanos has found her. And man, Greg, we keep saying the words getting real. It gets real here for sure. We zip back to Thanos' ship. They see Nebula's memories of Thanos getting beheaded. She swears she would never betray him. The present Nebula runs back to the ship to let the others know that Thanos is onto them, but it's too late. They show up and they take her away. I'll go back to what I said before, that I knew this wasn't going to be easy for the heroes, for the Avengers, but when you factor in Thanos and his army, this stuff's about to get real very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Thanos is not happy with what the Avengers are trying to do or undo what he has done in the future. And, he feels like he has the destiny to set the cosmic balance in check. He says something towards that effect. And, he wants to set the galaxy in balance. So, he's upset with Avengers. I think he calls them pesky humans.
Right.
To him, they have no business trying to undo what he has done, And I love the hologram where they're watching what has happened earlier in the film. And, he sees himself get beheaded. He says, that is destiny fulfilled. And he's not even worried about it. He's not even worried about, losing his own life there, being beheaded. He's just happy. He's satisfied with the fact that he won. He got the stones and he accomplished his goal, what he set out to do.
Right, and he calls himself inevitable. He sees himself as a necessary character in history, as any power-hungry dictator has. A necessary character. I'm supposed to be doing this. This is my calling in life. I'm supposed to do this, and it's eerie and it's frightening and it's terrifying, actually, that he believes everything he says. And you can't tell him differently. He believes everything he says. But as we know, his destiny in the end is not to win the day. It's not to come out on top, because the Avengers are just getting started. But that is going to do it for us this time. Yes, we do have to split this thing up. As we said before, it's just too big. There's just so much going on. And yes, we want to do justice to this film. We want to do this the right way. So be sure to come back for part 2. It's the next episode. We hope you enjoyed this one. And that is Avengers Endgame Part 1. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.